Honourable Trevor Mallard.
I'd like to join my colleague in acknowledging in particular the death of Cora Jews, who was someone with whom I spent quite a lot of time over the last 35 years, someone who first went to Tiki Tiki with, I think, early in 1975 and spent some good times in the wharenui around the fire till, well, I was going to say the early hours of the morning, but probably later than that as well, and someone who made a difference to my life and is a very special person. There are some other stories which I could tell which are probably might be appropriate for the marae, but probably not the House. But having joined with the member there, I do want to take a contrary point of view as to whether it's necessary within politics to have transparency and accountability. We've had a party act which has stood for that. It's been extremely important openness from their point of view, and what we've seen yesterday and today is a party which is attempting to close down, to shut down, and not to give reasons to the public for, as was described by Rodney Hyde, the case that was made for change by John Pascoe. And it's not, of course parties change leaders and deputy leaders all the time. I think probably the closest parallel I can remember to this one was David Longy taking out Bob Tizard in the early 1980s or the late 79 in 1979. That was pretty bitter. But and Roger Douglas was in the caucus at the time, and he was one of the main proponents of that. I gather he was on the other side on this particular occasion on the receiving end. But, sir, there are some things that we've heard in this House today from Rodney Hyde which can only be nonsense. He's talked about his respect for Heather Roy. If he had any respect for Heather Roy at all, then he would be honest with this House and with the public of New Zealand as to the reasons that she has gone. No, I'm not saying he has to vote for her. I'm not saying that they can't change. But what I am saying is that we expect from members of this Parliament, from people who are getting extra salaries as a result of being leaders of parties, some sort of honesty and transparency and straightforwardness as to the reasons that they have done that. I want to also say that it's interesting to me that the degree of complicity in this of John Key and his closeness to Rodney Hyde has become clear. We've been told in the House today that he knew for 13 days that Heather Roy was to be taken out, but he would not return a phone call from Heather Roy. Now, we have to be very careful how we express this in the House, sir, but I would have said a man of courage, a man of integrity, a man who supported ministers when he was Prime Minister would have taken the phone call. He would have had the backbone, to take the phone call, to listen to Heather Roy, didn't have to say anything, didn't have to agree with her, but to say, I won't talk to you because Rodney's told me not to, is an indication of who's pulling the strings in that particular relationship. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it's sort of been a little bit apparent for some time that this has been coming. Heather Roy is straightforward. She is honest. No, she's not. She doesn't take the Boscawen approach and the Hyde approach and knife people in the back. She has made it clear that she wanted an ACT party that had enough votes to make a difference. She wanted an ACT party in the House that was not dependent on one member for being there the way that it is now. And she wanted ACT to have broader appeal, to be a principled party, the way it was when Richard Prebble and Roger Douglas were having a leading role in the party in the past. and what she said was that the current approach that they're taking is not good enough. But she also asked some other questions. I understand that one of the questions she was asking was whether it was appropriate for the ACT Party to be taking money from David Henderson when he wasn't paying his other bills. Is it appropriate? Is it appropriate for the ACT Party to be taking money from David Henderson when he wasn't paying the IRD in the Christchurch City Council? And what she was also asking is whether it was appropriate with David Henderson, Bob Parker, Rodney Hyde and John Key to go to Queenstown together, to spend time making political arrangements, the four of them together in Queenstown. Was that something which is appropriate for Rodney Hyde to do as a minister? Even less appropriate for the Prime Minister to spend time with Bob Parker, Rodney Hyde and Davo Henderson, as he is described by Rodney Hyde. Is that the sort of... Well, I think that Heather Roy is asking the right questions as to what is appropriate behaviour for the Prime Minister and for her own party leader. And I just think the idea of meeting in that way with David Henderson is wrong. The idea of taking money from someone who himself is not paying the Christchurch City Council or the Inland Revenue Department is wrong, and a party should not do it. And I say to Heather Roy, good on you for blowing the whistle on that sort of arrangement. But, sir, I think we're beginning to get pretty close to what the real story is. And that is that Heather Roy said to Rodney Hyde that she thought it was inappropriate for him to take documents from her office. Now, I understand he's denied taking documents that he's not meant to have. Well, certainly within our government, there were documents which were top secret documents, which some ministers got and others didn't. It wasn't a matter of security clearance because we didn't clear our ministers, but we had arrangements whereby a senior group of ministers, and sometimes, for example, if the Minister of Defence was a less senior minister, that person was involved, and they had clearance for those documents, and other ministers did not, and we thought that was appropriate because effectively, especially where there was the safety of New Zealand service people abroad or our security people in New Zealand or abroad, we thought that was appropriate. So we agreed. No, that was, well, I don't know if we agreed. Helen said that the arrangements would be like that. But I want to know why Rodney Hyde took those papers and why did he give them to Nick Kearney? Why did Rodney Hyde take those papers and give them to Nick Kearney, a member of the ACT board? Or I'm not saying he gave them directly, he might have been a staff member involved. Nick Kearney, who until last night was a member of the ACT board and has resigned from the ACT board because he has been caught trying to give New Zealand Defence Assessment papers to a blogger. He picked the wrong blogger because it was someone who was an ex-military person who had integrity, who said that this is inappropriate and that should not happen. This person, this ex-blogger, apparently now the SIS is involved, and I don't want to go too far down that track because as a result, we don't talk about those matters too much in the House. But I say to the ACT Party, why does Heather Roy get the sack because one of Rodney Hyde's mates on the board gets some secret papers? That is absolutely wrong. And I say to John Key, who is in charge of the SIS, I say to John Key, who is in charge of the SIS and the overall security intelligence situation in New Zealand, that he needs to tidy their act up and not sack a minister for having integrity.